came right away. Here we are, Isabella.
Congratulations, my dear.
Well, it's a step. It breaks for a party. I'd like to take a holiday, but I don't have the time. I'd like to go somewhere exotic, like you, but just can't take the time away. I don't know how you could bear to leave Hawaii.
I did think of settling.
I'd like to lie in the sun all day, but I can't bear sitting still.
I sent for my sister Henny to come and join me. I said, Henny, we'll live here forever and help the natives. You can buy 2 sirloins of beef for what a pound of chops cost you in Edinburgh. And Henny wrote back, the dear, that yes, she would come to Hawaii if I wished. But I said she'd far better stay where she was. Henny was suited to life in Tobermory.
Poor Henny.
Do you have a sister?
Yes, in fact.
Henny was good. She was happy. I did Mrs. Face, my own pet, but I couldn't stay in Scotland. I loathed the constant murk.
Nijo!
Marlene.
How about a drink while we wait for the others? I think a drink anyway. What a week.
It was always the men who used to get so drunk. I was one of the maidens passing the sake.
Oh, I've had sake, small, hot drink, quite fortifying after a day in the wet.
One night, my father proposed 3 rounds of 3 cups, which was normal. And the Emperor should have said 3 rounds of 3 cups. But he said 3 rounds of 9 cups. So you can imagine. Then the Emperor passed his sake cup to my father and said, "Let the wild goose come to me this spring."
Let the what?
It's a literary allusion to a 10th century emperor.
This is the Emperor
His
of
Majesty
Japan.
is very cultured.
I once met the Emperor of Morocco.
Wasn't he quite old, did you, Isabella?
29.
It's a long story.
29 is an excellent age.
Well, I was only 14, and I knew he meant something, but I didn't know what. He sent me an 8-layered gown, which I sent back. So when the time came, I did nothing but cry. My thin gowns were badly ripped. But even when he left that morning...
Are you saying he raped you?
He had a green robe with scarlet lining and heavily embroidered trousers. I felt different about him. It made me uneasy. No, Mummy. I belonged to him. It was what I was brought up for since a baby. I soon found I was sad if he stayed away. It was depressing, day after day, not knowing when he would come. I never enjoyed taking other women to him.
I certainly never saw my father drunk. He was a clergyman, and I didn't get married until I was 50.
Just before he died, he said to me, "Serve His Majesty, be respectful. If you lose favour, enter holy orders."
But he meant stay in a convent, not go travelling around the country.
Well, priests were vagrants, so why not a nun? You think I shouldn't? I still did what my father wanted.
No,
I tried to do what my father wanted.
Wonderful idea. Correct. Good. Nijo, correct. Now, we know
Hello,
the
Brett.
is going to be late. Do you think we could wait for Joan? Would you like a drink?
Tried to be a clergyman's daughter. Needlework, music, charitable schemes. I had a tumour removed from my spine and spent a great deal of time on the sofa. I studied the metaphysical poets and hymnology.
I come of the line of 8 generations of poets. My father had a poem.
Oh, my father taught me Latin, although I was a girl.
We never had Latin.
Really, I was more suited to manual work. Cooking, washing, mending, riding,
Oh, I'm
horses.
sure you're very clever.
Better than reading books, eh? That's a rough life.
I never enjoyed my rough life. What I enjoyed most was being the Emperor's favourite and wearing thin silk.
Did you have any horses, Brett?
Pig. Joan, thank God. Now we can order. Do you know anyone? We were just talking about learning Latin and being clever girls. Joan was by way of an infant prodigy. Of course you were. What excited you most when you were 10?
Because angels are without matter. They are not individuals. Every angel is a species.
There you are.
I forgot all my Latin, but my father was the mainspring of my life. And when he died, I was so grieved. I'd have the chicken salad, please. And
My father was saying his prayers when he dozed off in the sun. I touched his knee to rouse him. I wonder what will happen, he said. And he was dead before he finished his sentence.
What a shock.
If he had died saying his prayers, he would have gone straight to heaven.
Death is the return of all creatures to God.
I shouldn't have woken him.
Damnation only means ignorance of the truth. I was always attracted by the teachings of John the Scot, though he was inclined to confuse God and the world.
Grief always overwhelmed me at the time.
What I fancy is the feta salad. Gret?
Meat and potatoes.
I am, of course, a member of the Church of England.
Well, I don't go to church anymore.
Good works
I
matter
like
more
Christmas
than church
carols,
attendance.
though, and that's a feta salad, lamb, and lots of potatoes, please. Don't do good works either.
Linguine, please. And
Well, I
salad.
tried, but oh dear. Henny, she did good works.
The first half of my life was all sin.
Stop
The second
it.
half
Food.
was penance.
And which did you like best?
Were your travels just a penance? Melon, please. Didn't you enjoy yourself?
Yes, but I was
Nothing
very
to
young.
start with for me.
It hurt to remember the past. I think that was repentance.
Well, I wonder.
Maybe I was homesick.
Or angry.
Not angry, no. Why angry?
Can we have some more bread?
I get angry.
But what about?
Oh, 2 bottles of number 4, please, and more bread.
I tried to understand Buddhism while I was in Japan, but all this birth and death succeeding each other through eternities just filled me with most profound melancholy. I do like something more active.
You could hardly say I was inactive. I walked every day for 20 years.
I don't mean walking.
I'm
mean
allowed to
running.
copy 5 Mahanya Sutras. Do you
I
know
don't think
how long
religious
they
beliefs are
are?
something
My
you have
head
in
is
common.
My head.
Activity,
It's
yes.
no good being active in heresy.
Oh, what heresy? She's calling the Church of England a heresy.
There are some very attractive
I've never
heresies.
heard of Christianity. Never heard of it.
I'm not a
Barbarians.
Christian. Not a Buddhist either.
You have heard of it.
I don't believe we all have to believe the same.
I knew coming to dinner with a pope we should keep off religion.
I always enjoy a theological argument, but I won't try to convert you. I'm not a missionary. Anyway, I'm a heresy myself.
There are some barbaric practices in the East,
Barbarian.
among the lower classes.
I would have known.
Well, theology always made my head ache.
How else could I have left the court if I wasn't a nun? When my father died, I only had His Majesty. So when I fell out of favour, I had nothing. Religion is a kind of nothing. So I
That's
dedicate
what I
myself
mean
to
about
me, nothing.
Buddhism. It doesn't brace.
Have some wine, teacher.
Haven't you ever felt like that? Nothing will ever happen again. I'm dead already. You've all felt
You
like that.
thought your life was over, but it wasn't.
You wish it was over.
Sad, yes. When I first came to London, I sometimes. When I left America, I did. It was only for a few hours, not for 20 years.
When I was 40, I
I
thought
didn't
my
say
life
I
was
felt
over.
like that for 20
Oh, I was pitiful.
Not everything.
I was sent on a cruise for my health, and I felt even worse. Pains in my bones, pins and needles in my hands, swelling behind the ears, and oh, stupidity. I shook all over, indefinable terror. And Australia seemed to me a hideous country. The acacias stank like drains. I had a photograph for Henny, but I told her I could not send it. My hair had fallen out and my clothes were crooked. I looked completely insane and suicidal.
So did I, exactly, dressed as a nun. I had to wear walking shoes for the first time.
I longed to go home.
I longed to
Totally
go back
not.
10 years.
Houses are so perfectly dismal.
I thought travelling cheered you both up.
It did, of course.
I'm not a cheerful
It
person.
was on the
I
travels
just
from
love
Australia to the Sandwich Isles I fell in love with the sea. There were rats in the cabin and ants in the food, and suddenly it was like a new world. I woke up every morning happy, knowing there'd be nothing to annoy me, no nervousness, no dressing.
them. Didn't you enjoy being dressed? I adored my clothes.
You had
When
pretty
I was
colours,
chosen to
Isabel.
give sake to His Majesty's brother, the Emperor Cariano, I wore a 7-layered gown in shades of red and 2 outer garments, yellow lined with green and a little green jacket. And Lady Betta wore a
I
fire
dressed as a boy when I left home.
You dressed as a boy?
Of course, for safety.
It was easy, I was only 12. Also, women weren't allowed in the library.
Did you run away
We wanted
alone?
to study in Athens. No, not alone. I went with my friend.
And elopement.
He was 16, but I thought I knew as much science as he did, and almost as much philosophy.
Well, I always travelled as a lady, and I repudiated strongly any suggestion in the press that I was other than feminine.
I never wear trousers at the office.
There was
couldn't
no
do
great
it.
English woman of my age and appearance.
And you got away with it, Joan.
I did then.
And nobody noticed anything.
They noticed I was a very clever boy. And when I shared a bed with my friend, that was ordinary. 2 poor students in a lodging house. I think I forgot I was pretending.
Rocky Mountain Jim, Mr. Nugent, he showed me no disrespect. He found it interesting, I think, that I could make scones and also lasso cattle. Indeed, he declared his love for me, which was most distressing.
Well, what did he say?
What did you
We always
say?
make poems first.
I urged him to give up whiskey, but he said it was too late. Oh, he had lived alone in the mountains for many years.
Did you ever...
Mr. Nugent was a man any woman might love, but none could marry. I came back to England.
Did you write him a poem before you left?
Did you never see
Snow
him?
on the mountains,
No,
my
never.
tears wet with sleep. In England, no snow, no tears.
Well, I say never. One morning, very early in Switzerland, it was a year later, I had a vision of him as I last saw him, in his trapper's clothes, with his hair round his face. And that was the day I learned later. He died with a bullet in his brain. He just bowed to me and vanished.
When your lover died. One of my
friend
lovers
died.
died.
Have we all got dead lovers?
Not me, sorry.
I wasn't a nun. I was still at court and he was a priest. And when he came to me, he dedicated his whole life to hell.
I
Because he
quarrelled
knew when
with
he
him
died,
over the
he
teachings
came
of
to
John
me,
the
there were
Scot,
others.
who held that our ignorance of God is the same as his ignorance of himself. He only knows what he creates because he creates everything he knows, but he himself is above being. Do you follow?
No.
I could have bear to
But
think
go
you were
on.
Shakespeare would be
St.
wrong.
Augustine maintained that Neoplatonic ideas are indivisible from God, but I agree with John that the created world is essences derived from ideas which derive from God. As Dennis the Areopagite said, the student.
In what shape you returned?
First we give God a name, then deny
Sorry.
it, then...
Sorry, Dennis. Said what?
Well, we disagreed about it, we quarrelled, and the next day he fell ill. I was so
Misery in this
annoyed.
life and worse than the
All the
next.
time I was nursing him, I kept going over the arguments in my mind. Matter is not a means of knowing the essence. The source of the species is the idea. But then I realised he'd never understand my arguments again, and that night he died. John the Scot held that the individual disintegrates, and there is no
I wouldn't
personal
have you think I was in
immortality.
love with Jim Nugent. It was a yearning to save him I felt.
So what did you do?
Well, first I decided to stay a man. I was used to it, and I wanted to devote my life to learning. Do you know why I went to Rome? Italian men didn't have beards.
The loves of my life were Penny, my own pet, and my dear husband, the doctor, who nursed Henny through her last illness. I knew it'd be terrible when Henny died, but I didn't know how terrible. I felt half of myself had gone. How could I go on my travels without that sweet soul waiting at home for my letters? It was Dr. Bishop's devotion to her in her last illness that made me decide to marry him. He and Henny had the same sweet character.
I thought His Majesty had a sweet character. For when he found out about Ariake, he was very kind to me. But really it was because he no longer cared for me. One night he sent me out to a man who would be pursuing me.
I
He
didn't
lay
wish
awake
marriage
on
to
the
think
other side
more
of
of
the
a
street
step.
and listened.
I tried very hard to cope with the ordinary drudgery of life. I was ill again, carbuncles on the spine and nervous prostration. I ordered a tricycle. That was my idea of adventure then. And John himself became ill with erysipelas and anemia. I began to love him with all my heart, but it was too late. He was a skeleton with white, transparent hands. I pushed him on various sea fronts in a bath chair, and he faded and left me. There was nothing in my life. The doctor said I had gout and my
There was
heart
nothing in
much
my life
affected.
without the Empress' favour. The Empress was my enemy. Marlene, she said I had no right to wear 3-layered gowns. But I
There was
had
nothing in
every
my
right. The
life
doctors
except
ordered
my
my
studies.
notes. I would in public.
I was
permission to
obsessed
wear
with
hidden
pursuit of
veils.
the truth. I taught at the Greek school in Rome, where St. Augustine had made famous. I was poor, I worked hard, I spoke apparently brilliantly. I was still very young, I was a stranger. Suddenly I was quite famous. I was everyone's favourite. Huge crowds came to hear me. The day after they made me cardinal, I fell ill and lay 2 weeks without speaking, full of terror and regret.
Success with
But then I got up, determined to go on. I was seized again with a desperate longing for the
Yes, to
opposite.
go on. I sat in Tobermory and sewed a complete outfit in Jaeger flannel.
Out of
I was
favour, but I
56
didn't
years
die.
old.
I left on foot and nobody saw me go. For the next 20 years, I walked through Japan.
Walking's good.
Pope Leo died, and I was chosen. All right then, I would be Pope. I would know God. I would know everything.
I determined to leave my grief behind and set off for Tibet.
Magnificent, all of you. I think we're going to need another couple of bottles. I know Griselda's not here yet, but I want to drink a toast to you all.
Oh, to yourself, surely. We are here to celebrate your success.
Yes, what is it exactly, Margaret?
Well, it isn't Pope, but it is Managing Director.
And you find work for people.
Yes, an employment agency.
Over all the women and the men too.
And very well deserved too. I'm sure it's just the beginning of something extraordinary.
Well, it makes for a party.
To Marlene!
And all of you.
Marlene!
We've come such a long way. To our courage, and the way we've changed our lives, and to our extraordinary achievements.
Achievements. Such adventures. We were crossing a mountain pass at 7,000 feet. The cook was all to pieces. The muleteers suffered fever and snow blindness, and although my spine was agony, I managed very well.
Wonderful. Once I was ill for 4 months, lying alone in an inn. Nobody to offer a horse to Buddha. I had to live for myself, and I did live.
Of course you did. It was far worse returning to Tobermory. I always felt dull when I was stationary.
Exactly.
That's why I would
We
never
saw
stay anywhere.
The shrine on the beach, the moon on the sea, the goddess vowing to save all living creatures.
I
Even the
thought
fishes.
the Pope would know everything. I thought God would speak to me directly, but of course he knew I was a woman.
Nobody else even suspected.
In the end, I did take a lover again.
And
back
laughter.
to
You warm.
He was one of my chamberlains. There were such a lot of servants when you're Pope, and the food's very good. And I realised I did know the truth, because whatever the Pope says, that's the truth.
What was he like, the chamberlain?
Big cock.
What was he like?
Did he fancy you when he thought you were a fella?
He could keep a secret.
So you did know everything.
I enjoyed being Pope. I consecrated bishops and let people kiss my feet. I received the King of England when he came to submit to the church. Unfortunately, there were earthquakes, and some village reported it had rained blood. And in France, there was a plague of giant grasshoppers. But I don't think that could have been my fault.
Superstition.
The grasshoppers fell on the English Channel, and their bodies were washed up on shore and rotted and poisoned the air. And everyone in those parts died.
I was nearly murdered in China by a howling mob. They thought the barbarians ate babies and put them on a railway steady and ground up their eyes for lenses of camels. And they were shouting, "Child eater, child eater!" Someone tried to sell Europeans girl babies for cameras and stew.
So apart from the grasshoppers, it was a great success.
If it hadn't been for the baby, I expect I'd have lived to an old age, like Theodora of Alexandria.
What happened to
lived
your
as a
baby?
monk. She
I had
was
some
abused by a girl who fell in love with her. Wouldn't that be a worse thing than having it? You're a pope with a child. That's about as bad as possible.
Well, surely other popes had children.
They didn't give birth to them.
Well, you were a woman.
Exactly, and I shouldn't have been a woman. Women, children, and lunatics can't be pope.
So the only thing to do was to get rid of it.
I didn't know what was happening. I thought I was getting fatter. I was sitting around and eating more. The life of a pope is quite luxurious. I don't think I'd spoken to a woman since I was 12. The chamberlain was the one who realised.
By then it was too late.
I didn't want to pay attention. It was easier to do nothing.
But you had to plan for having it. You had to say you were ill and go away.
That's what I should have done, I suppose.
Did you want them to find out?
I too was often in embarrassing situations, but there's no need for a scandal. My first child was His Majesty's, which unfortunately died. My second was Akiwano's. I was 17. He'd been in love with me since I was 13. He was very upset when I had to go to the palace. He sent me lots of poems, very romantic. Now, His Majesty had not been near me for 2 months, so he thought I was 4 months pregnant, when in fact I was 6.
I never knew what
So when the 9th month came, I had to announce I was seriously ill, and Akiwano announced he was going on a religious retreat. He held me round the waist and lifted me up as the baby was born. Cut the cord with a short sword, wrapped the baby in white and took it away. It was only a girl, but I was still sad to lose it. Then I told His Majesty I had miscarried because of my illness. And there you are. The danger was past.
But me, Joe, I wasn't used to having a woman's body.
So what happened?
I didn't know, of course, that it was near the time. It was Rogation Day. There was always a procession. I was on the horse, dressed in my robe, the cross carried in front, and all the cardinals following behind, all the clergy of Rome, and a huge crowd of people.
Total Pope.
We set off from St. Peter's to go to St. John's. I felt a slight pain earlier. I thought it was something I'd eaten. Then it came back, and came back more often. I thought, when this is over, I'll go to bed. But there were still long periods when I felt perfectly all right, and I didn't want to attract attention and spoil the ceremony. And I suddenly realized what it must be. I had to last out till I could get home and hide. Then something changed. My breath started to catch. I couldn't plan things properly anymore. We were in a little street that goes between St. Clement's and the Colosseum, and I just had to get off the horse and sit down for a minute. Great waves of pressure were going through my body. I heard sounds like a cow lowing. They were coming out of my mouth. From far away, I heard people screaming, "The Pope is ill! The Pope is dying!" And the baby just slid out onto the road. How embarrassing! One of the cardinals said, "The Antichrist!" I fell over in a faint. What did they do? They took me there, please. They took me by the feet, dragged me out of town, and stoned me to death.
Joan, that's horrible.
I don't really remember.
And the child died too?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
I never had any children. I was very fond of horses.
I saw my daughter once, when she was 3 years old. She wore a plum red small-sleeved gown.
Birdie was my
And everyone
favourite.
his wife had taken
Little
away because
Indian
their own
bay
child
mare
had
I rode
died.
in the Rocky Mountains.
Everyone thought I was just a visitor. She was being brought up carefully, so she could be sent to the palace like I was.
Legs of iron and always cheerful, and such a pretty face. The stranger led her, she reared up like a bronco.
I never saw my third child after he was born. The son of Ariaki the priest. Ariaki held him on his lap the day he was born and talked to him as if he could understand, and cried. My fourth child was Ariaki's too. Ariaki died before he was born. He didn't want to see anyone. I stayed alone in the hills. There was a boy again, my third son. But oddly enough, I felt nothing for him.
How many children did you have, Gret?
10.
Whenever I came back to England, I felt I had so much to atone for. Henny and John were so good. I did no good in my life. I spent years in self-gratification. So I hurled myself into committees. I nursed the people of Tobermory in the epidemic of influenza. I lectured the Young Women's Christian Association on thrift. I taught and taught, explaining how the East was vicious and corrupt. My travels must do good to someone beside myself. Oh, I wore myself out with good causes.
God. Why are we all so miserable?
The procession never went down that street again.
They
solid marble with a hole in the seat.
Oh, serious?
And it was in the chapel of the Saviour. And after he was elected, the Pope had to sit.
Oh, somebody look up his skirt. What an extraordinary thing!
The clergy made sure he was a man.
Balls, yes!
Why couldn't they just lift up his robe?
And you know, they sit there and they dignify.
Big one, small one.
Griselda, sorry.
Sorry I'm so late.
It's all right, would you like something to eat?
No, don't bother.
It's no bother, have you eaten?
Really, I'm not hungry.
Oh, we'll have some pudding.
Oh, I never eat pudding.
Oh, don't tell me you're anorexic. Oh, we're having pudding. I am. Getting nice and fresh.
Well, if everyone else is, I don't mind.
Who do you know? This is Joan. She was Pope in the 9th century. Isabella Bird, the Victorian traveller. Lady Nijo, from Japan, Emperor's concubine and Buddhist nun. 13th century, nearly your own time. And Mrs. Gret, who was painted by Braille. Now, Griselda was in Petrarch and Boccaccio and Chaucer because of her extraordinary marriage. Oh, I'll have the chocolate tart, please, because it's disgusting.
Tiramisu.
Apple pie and
Oh,
cream.
it's delicious, is what Joan's having.
A Roman Catholic dessert? Yes, please.
Hey!
Just cheese and biscuits, they hurt.
Yes, Griselda's life is just like a fairy tale, but it starts with marrying the prince.
He's only a marquis, Marlene.
Oh, come on, everyone for miles around is his liege, and he's absolute lord of life and death, and you were the poor but beautiful peasant girl, and he was
How old were he? 15. I was brought up in court circles. It's still a shock. Had you ever seen him? Oh, I'd seen him riding by. Well, we all had. He'd seen me in the fields with the sheep.
Oh, I'd been
Well,
well
he just
to mind
rode up while you were minding the
And
sheep and asked you to marry him.
No. It was on the wedding day. I was waiting outside the front door to see the procession. Everyone wanted him to get married, so there'd be an heir to look after us when he died.
I don't think
And
Walter
at last he
wanted to
announced
get
the day
married.
for the
It is
wedding.
Walter, isn't it?
But nobody knew who the bride was. We all thought she must be a foreign princess. We were longing to see her. Then the carriage stopped outside our cottage, and we couldn't see the bride anywhere. And then he came and spoke to my father. And your father told you to serve the prince. My father could hardly speak. The Marquis said it wasn't an order. I could say no. But if I was to say yes, I must always obey him in everything.
That's when you should have suspected.
But of course a wife must obey her husband.
I
And of
thought
course
of
I must obey the
on a
Marquis.
horse, but didn't seem to
Why
arrive.
mention it at all?
Actually, I wouldn't have wanted to
Just
go
he
abroad
had-
while I
think
was
about it,
married.
that's why.
I'd rather obey the Marquis than a boy from the village.
I never obeyed anyone. They all obeyed me.
What did you wear? They didn't make you get married in your own clothes.
That would be preferred.
Just you wait.
He had ladies with him who undressed me, and they had a white silk dress and jewels for my hair.
And at first, he seemed perfectly normal.
Marlene, you're so critical of him. Of course he was normal. He was very kind.
Griselda, he took your babies.
Walter found it hard to believe I loved him. But he couldn't believe that I would always obey him. He had to prove it.
I don't think Walter liked
I'm
them.
sure he loved me, Marlene, all the time.
Oh, he just had a funny way of
It was
showing
hard
it.
for him
How
too.
do you mean he took your baby?
Was it a boy? No, the first one was a girl. Even so, it's hard when he takes them. Did you ever see it? Yes. She was 6 weeks old. Much better to do it straight away.
But why did your husband take the child?
He said all the people hated him because I was just one of them. And now that I had a child, well, they were restless. He had to get rid of the child to keep them quiet. But he said he wouldn't snatch her. I must agree and obey and give her up. So when I was feeding her, a man came into the room and took her away. I thought he was going to kill her before he was even out of the room.
But you didn't struggle. You let him take her.
I asked him to give her back so that I could kiss her. And I asked him to bury her where no animals could dig her up.
Oh dear.
It was Walter's child to do what he liked with
But
her.
surely murder.
Bastard!
Promised.
Can't bear this.
I understand. Of course you had to. He was your life. Were you in favour after that?
Yes, we were very happy together. We never spoke about what had happened.
I can see you were doing what you thought was your duty, but didn't it make you ill?
Oh, I was very well, thank you.
And you had another child?
Not for 4 years, but then I did, yes, a boy.
A boy.
Yes,
So
I was
tend
so
to have
pleased. I kept my son until he was 2 years old. Peasant's grandson. Made the people angry, Walter explained.
But surely he wouldn't kill his children
Wasn't
just
true.
because.
Walter would never give in to the people. He wanted to see if I loved him enough.
He killed his children
easier
to
the
see
second
if you
time than
loved
harder.
him enough.
It was always easy, because I always knew I would do what he said.
I hope you didn't have any more children.
No. No more. It was 12 years till he tested me again.
So whatever did you do this time?
Well, he
My
sent
dear
me
John,
away.
I never loved him
He
enough.
said that people wanted him to marry someone else who could give him an heir. And he'd had special permission from the Pope. So I said I'd go home to my father. I came with nothing, so I left with nothing. I took off all my clothes. He let me keep my slip on so he wouldn't be shamed. And I walked home barefoot. My father came out in tears. Everyone was crying except me.
At least your father wasn't dead. I had no
It can be a relief to come home. I love to see Henny's sweet face again.
Yes, I was perfectly content. And very soon he sent for me again.
I don't think I would have gone.
He told me to come. I had to obey him. He wanted me to help prepare his wedding. He was getting married to a young girl from France. And nobody except me knew how to arrange things exactly the way he liked them.
I didn't live a woman's life. I don't understand.
The young girl was 16, far more beautiful than me. I could see why he loved her.
I can't stand this.
And she had a younger brother with her as a page.
6 coffees. Brandy.
Then they all went into the feast.
6
that I'd prepared.
brandies. Doubles straight away.
But he stayed behind, put his arms round me, and kissed me.
Like a
I
dream.
felt half asleep with the shock.
And said, this is your son and your daughter.
Yes.
What?
So you got them back?
I did think it was remarkably barbaric to kill them, but you learn not to say anything.
Walter was a
He had them
monster.
brought up secretly, I suppose.
Weren't you angry? What did you do?
Well, I fainted. Then I cried and kissed the children.
Did you feel anything
Everyone
for
was
them?
making a fuss of me.
What? Did you feel anything for the children?
Of course. I loved them.
So you forgave him and lived with him.
He'd suffered so much all those years.
Henny had the same sweet character.
He dressed you again. Cloth of gold.
I can't forgive anything.
You really are exceptional, Griselda.
Nobody gave me back my children.
I could never be like Henny. I was always so busy in England, the kind of business I detested. The very presence of people drained my emotional reserves. I could not be like Henny, however I tried. I tried, as ill as can be. The doctors suggested a steel net for my head. The weight of my own head was too much for my diseased spine. It is dangerous to put oneself in depressing
Don't cry.
circumstances. Why should I do
My
it?
grand and my father both died in war. So much pain.
Yes, but don't cry.
They wouldn't let me back into the palace when he was dying. So I hid in the room with his coffin. And then I couldn't find where I left my shoes. So I had to follow the funeral procession in bare feet. I couldn't keep up. By the time I got there, it was all over. Just a few whiffs of smoke. That was all that was left of him. What I want to know is, if I'd still been at court, would I have been allowed to wear full mourning?
I'm sure you would.
Why'd you say that? Oh, you don't know anything about it. Would I have been allowed to wear full mourning?
How can people live in this dim, pale island and wear our hideous clothes? I
cannot and will not live the life of a lady. I'll tell you something that made me angry. When I was 18 at the full moon ceremony, they make this special rice gruel and stir it with sticks. And then they beat their women across their loins so they'll produce sons and not daughters. And His Majesty beat as hard as usual.
What a sod.
That's not it. That's normal, Marley. What made us angry was he allowed his attendants to beat us too. And they had a wonderful time. So Lady Jenka and I made them. All the ladies hid in His Majesty's room. And Lady Mashmazu stood guard with a stick. And when His Majesty came in, Lady Jenka seized him. And I beat him hard until he promised he would never allow anyone else to beat us again. That was an awful fuss. His nobles were horrified. They wouldn't even dream of stepping in His Majesty's shadow. I'd hit him with a stick.
Mari magno to bandivo sai quara ventis, et era magnum materia spectare laborum, non quia vexare quem quempsio cunda voluptas, sed quibus ipse malis carias quia generis suave est. Suave etiam bellae certamina magna tueri per campos instruction, tua saene pacti pericla, sed nil docius est. Bene quam munita teneri edita doctrina sapientem templa serena.
I do think, well, I do wonder, it would have been nicer if Walter hadn't acted.
Why should I? Why should I?
I hit him with a stick.
Dictare ingenio, contendere nobilitate, noctes atque dies, nisae praestantae labor. Non quia vexare quem quams iacunda, sed quibus, misera!
No, misera!
Pectora
caca!
Qualibus in tenebris vita, quantis re periclis degita highway quod conquest?
We come into hell for a big
No,
man.
they were there, his alias.
Listen, she's been to hell.
We come into hell for a big mouth. Hell's black and red. It's like the village where I come from. There's a river and a bridge and houses. There's places on fire like when the soldiers come. There's a big devil and he's staggering! Big hole in his ass! And he's scooping stuff out of it. And it's falling down on us. And it's money. So lots of women stop and get some. But most of us is fighting the devils. And there's lots of little devs around you think you don't like to look, like rats and lizards and nasty things. A bumper face, and fish with legs, and faces on things that don't have faces on! They don't hurt. You just keep going. We've all had worse, you see. We've had the Spanish. We've all had family killed. My big son down a wheel. Birds eat him. My baby. A soldier ran her through with a sword. I'd had enough. I was mad. I hate the bastards. I come out of my house that morning and I shout to the neighbours come out and I say, come on! We're going where evil comes from and we're going to pay those bastards out. So we all come out just as we were from washing and baking in their aprons. And we push down the street and the ground opens up into a street just like half in hell. I've got a sword in my hand from somewhere.
Something.
And I fill my basket with the gold cups they drink out of down there. Head down, fighting! You didn't stop for nothing! Don't we give them devils such a victory!
Something, all that all splendorum purpurea.
I thought I'd have a last dawn to the West River in China. Why not? Oh, but the doctor's so very grey. I just went to Morocco. The sea was so wild I had to be landed by ship's crane. This whole bucket.
Whole bucket? Good!
go to work.
Speed's not too great, not too bad. So, Janine, tell me about your present job.
I'm a secretary.
Secretary or typist?
Well, I started off as a typist, but for the last 6 months I've been a secretary. To 3 of them. They share me, really. There's Mr. Ashford, he's the office manager, and then there's Mr. Philby in
Quite
sales.
a small place.
It's a bit small.
Friendly?
Oh, it's friendly enough.
Prospects?
I don't think so. That's the trouble, really. Miss Lewis is secretary to the managing director. She's been there forever. And then there's Mrs. Bradford.
So you're looking
She's
for
the
a job with
secretary.
better prospects?
I'd like a change.
So you'll take anything comparable?
Oh, no, I do want prospects. I want more money.
You're getting?
100.
Well, that's not bad, you know, when you're, what, 20?
I'm saving to get married.
So, Janine, are you telling me you don't want anything long-term?
Oh, I might do.
Because where do the prospects come in? I mean, no kids for a bit?
Oh, no, not kids, not yet.
So you won't be telling them you're getting married?
Oh, had I better not?
It's better.
Well, I'm not wearing a ring. We thought we wouldn't spend on a ring.
Well, say it's taking it off.
Oh, I wouldn't take it off.
Still, better not mention it at the interview. Do you have a feel for any particular
What if they
kind
ask?
of company?
I thought advertising.
A lot of people do think advertising. I do have some vacancies, but I think they're looking for something a little glossier.
You mean the way I dress? Well, I can dress different. I dress like this on purpose for where I am now.
I have secretary to the marketing manager of a knitwear manufacturer.
Knitwear?
Marketing's near enough advertising. He's 35. I'm married. I've sent him a girl before and she was very happy. She left to have a baby, so you probably won't want to mention the marriage there. I think he's very fair. Good at his job, so you won't have to nurse him along. And it's 110, so it's better than you're doing now.
I don't know.
I have a fairly small concern here, father and 2 sons. You'd have more say, potentially. Secretarial and reception duties. It's only 100, but the post is going to grow with the concern. Then you would be at the top with the new girls coming in underneath.
Oh, what is it they do?
Lampshades.
Just lampshades?
That would be my first choice for you, with the knitwear the second. There's plenty of different types of lampshade. So, are you free to go any day they call you for interview?
I'd like to travel.
We don't have any foreign clients. You'd have to go elsewhere.
Oh, yes, I know. I don't really. I just mean that
Does your fiancé want to travel?
I'd like a job where I was here, in London, and with him and everything. But now and again, I expect it's silly, really. Are there jobs like that?
I have PA to a top executive in a multinational. But if that's the idea, you need to be planning ahead. Is that where you want to be in 10 years' time?
I might not be alive in 10 years.
Yes, but you will be. You'll have children.
I can't think about 10 years.
You don't have the speeds anyway. So I'll send you to these 2, shall I? Now, have you been to any other agency? Just so we don't have wires crossed. Look, Janine, I want you to get one of these posts. If I'm sending you out there, I'm putting myself on the line for you. Your presentation's okay, you look fine. Just confident. Go in there believing that this is the best job for you and you are the best person for the job. If you don't believe it, they won't believe it.
Do you believe it?
I think you could make me believe it if you put your mind to it.
Yes. All right.